everybody, it is Bridget Tieben. This is Sunday night, last day of February, February 28th, and finally the preceptorship information has come from the hospital, and so Dr. Benetti has been working very, very hard over the past couple of days to get it all pulled together for you. I just want to give you some information about preceptorship in my clinical group. You might have very slight variations. The expectations for all students and the requirements that you have to meet are the same across the entire class, but we might have a little bit of variance as far as timelines and things like that with our individual groups. So I'm going to cover some of the things just to touch back on that Dr. Benetti covered during the preceptor orientation a couple of weeks ago. Also just show you a couple of the forms that you now have access to in the preceptorship folder. And if anything, you have a question at all, I'm working during this week of spring break. I know you all are having a little bit of time off, and I'm sure you're enjoying that after working so hard the last 6 or 7 weeks. But don't hesitate to email me or text me. Just make sure you include your name because I don't have your number saved into my phone. But I'll be happy to answer your questions or give you more clarification if needed. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is your weekly clinical evaluation forms. As Dr. Benetti said in preceptor orientation, those have to get filled out even if you have a week during the preceptor time that you don't go to the clinical site if your preceptor is off or whatever. For example, this very first week, because of spring break, you're not doing any preceptor hours. However, you might be precepting on the first day available to you, which is Saturday, March 6th. For my clinical group, your preceptorship weeks will run from Sunday to Saturday. So during this first week, if you do not precept on Saturday, March 6th, then you would open up your weekly clinical evaluation form and you would type at the top, did not precept this week, and you would submit it. If you do precept on Saturday, March 6th, you still open up that clinical evaluation form for week 1, and you type in all the information about how you met basic care and comfort, how you addressed all the human flourishing, spirit of inquiry, and everything that's on that form for week 1. Remember, it's a working document just like it's been in all your other courses throughout the program, and so you need to make sure when you pull off the reflection that I have given on your week 1 after I've received your information, save that to your computer before you add your week 2 information to that so that it's a working document going back and forth between the two of us every single week. My group, the Tieben group, will be again Sunday to Saturday. So for this first week, you will either have I did not precept or you will have information about your preceptorship on Saturday. Week 2 preceptor evaluation form will be used for precepting on Sunday, March 7th through Saturday, March 13th. So when I open up your Moodle Dropbox and see your week 2 clinical evaluation form, I should see any days and information from those days that you precepted from Sunday, March 7th through Saturday, March 13th. Week 3, of course, then would be from Sunday the 14th through Saturday the 20th, so on and so on. Now, I realize that if you precept on Saturday, which is the last day of the clinical evaluation form for my group, you're really tired by the time you get out of work at 7 o'clock at night and get home, and you may not have the energy to fill out your evaluation that night. And because of that reason, your evaluation form will be due every Monday in the Dropbox by 8 a.m. So on Monday, March 8th at 8 a.m., I should be able to open the Dropbox and see that you have submitted your weekly clinical evaluation form for week 1, which would be either saying, I did not have any preceptor hours this week, or you precepted on Saturday, March 6th. Then when I open the clinical Dropbox for week 2 on Monday, March 15th at 8 a.m., I should see everyone has a clinical evaluation form for week 2 filled out that would include all your days that you precepted between Sunday, March 7th through Saturday, March 13th, so on and so on and so forth. Okay. When I come around to round, physical assessments, we've already talked about that. There is a little tool that you can look at in the preceptorship folder. But just remember all the different parts of a particular assessment. Remember respiratory, for example. It's not just what their pulse oximetry says. It's not just how many times a minute they're breathing. but what is the quality of the respirations? Do you hear anything? The rate, the depth, is it equal on both sides? Remember all the different pieces and parts of all the different systems and things that you should be checking. Okay. When I also round, I'm going to be asking to look at your medications and know why your patient's taking those medications. Why are they getting an antibiotic? Well, what's the lab associated with that? What's their white count? How's it been trending? Is it going up? Is it going down? Did they have any cultures that were sent out? If your patient's on insulin, how is their trending for their finger stick blood sugars or their serum glucose? And, you know, are they compliant? We're going to be talking about these things. A lot of these things that you've been talking about in all your other clinical courses. And I know some of your clinicals have been virtual because of COVID, but you need to be thinking about the why behind the what. The what is my patient is taking the medicine, but why are they taking it? What is it for? Don't just assume because they're on a beta blocker that they have high blood pressure. It could be for something else. So you need to be very well aware of that. Again, remember that with your physical assessment, when I come around and do our rounding, you will be performing that. And then based off of that assessment, you will be typing up a narrative assessment and putting it into the Dropbox. We will have all of these completed by the end of week 2, so be prepared. I may or may not do it on the first time I see you. Most likely not, because that's kind of the day that I'm just doing like housekeeping things, kind of like checking in, collecting the paperwork, making sure that you're getting acclimated to the unit. But I might see you on the second day or the third day, and we might do it. It still might be within your first full week, but you know, we really can do it at any time. So be ready for that. Let's see. I have lots of notes here, so I don't forget to tell you things. It's almost easier to teach live than to have to do a recording and not have anybody live asking questions back. So again, email me if you think maybe I misspoke about something. Very likely that could happen without having a live audience, and have the ability to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. Excuse me. For your schedule, you're going to have your schedule. I'm going to pull up a document here real quick. Here it is. Dr. Benetti showed you this during, get off of there, little thing. She showed you this during our preceptor orientation. Hopefully you all can see this. On my screen it looks like it's showing, so hopefully it is in the recording as well. But you're going to follow these directions to sign yourself up to put your hours in that you're going to be working along your preceptor. Now, when you get in touch with your preceptor, he or she may or may not have all the days during the time that you're precepting. Or they might say, our next 6 week schedule is not out, but I know that you can come this day and this day. And they might have enough just to get you going on your first couple of shifts. If that's all they have, that's okay. Once they get that schedule, then you need to get the rest of the days solidified with them and get them put on the calendar. We need you to get your days scheduled on the timesheet as quickly as possible. But we understand, again, if your preceptor hasn't had their new schedule released and they may only be able to give you 1 or 2 days. What should not happen is that you just add on a day or two each week or week by week. You need to get it on there. We need to be able to show to our accrediting bodies that you have your hours recorded. And remember, they have to, we covered this in preceptor orientation, they have to be on the schedule before you can show up to work. So your shift would start at it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but really you're going to show up by 6:45 because they're going to start to get report. And you likely aren't going to leave until 7:15. Those 30 minutes you don't record on the timesheet, that kind of encompasses your 30-minute lunch break. The only times you're putting on the timesheet are 7 a.m. to 1900, so your start and stop time. But your days have to be on before you actually show up. So if you are scheduled to work on Saturday, March 6th, you will have to have your time on the schedule for 7 a.m. to 1900 prior to showing up at the hospital that morning. We run the report at 7 a.m. and those are the only people that we should expect to see in the hospital that day. again, we have to provide this information to the board, to our accrediting bodies, and we can't have students in the hospital that we're not able to account for. Jane talked about in preceptor orientation, you cannot retroactively go back and say, oh, I worked, I really did, and Susie and Joey and Bill, they'll all verify that I was here. It's not on the schedule, you didn't work. We are not going backwards and adding hours for you. We can get in a lot of trouble for that. If for some reason your preceptor gets called off, you need to go into the schedule and remove your hours. That is not your fault, if you will. I'm not sure that's the right word, but you're only allowed to have 2 unschedules that are for your reasoning for the entire preceptorship. Any more than that, it's an action plan. But if the preceptor calls off sick or they get called off because of low census and you have to unschedule, that does not count against you. So don't be panicked about that. But we still need to be made aware. And you need to get it off the schedule before 7 a.m. If your preceptor gets called into work because they need extra nurses that day, and he or she calls you and says you want to come in, you may go in, but you may be very short on time. So if you get the call at 6:30 and you know it's going to take you, a few minutes to get ready and get to the hospital, so long as you can be there by the time they start at 7 a.m., you may go in. But those hours need to still get added to the timesheet. Now, it may be that you have to pull up the timesheet as soon as you get to the hospital. And in that case, because it was late notification from your preceptor, and it didn't allow you time really to get ready to safely drive there and get on the unit, what you will do is you will call or text me and tell me that you got called in, and as soon as you get to the facility, then you need to pull up the timesheet and you need to get the hours put on. You can't think about doing it later that day at lunch or after you get home that night. You need to do it as soon as you can get to a computer, okay? And we realize that every now and then the preceptor gets called in and they don't give you much notice. It's kind of an afterthought, like, oh gosh, I have a student, maybe they'll want to come in with me. And so we realize that happens on occasion, not a lot, but it does. And so notify us, and then we will know that you are going to be adding those on as soon as you get to the facility. But again, you can't wait until lunchtime or something like that. Then really that day, it's kind of lost for you, if you will, because we can't go backwards and add the hours. If your preceptor gets pulled to another unit, that happens pretty often, really. Just text me and say, hey, I'm still going in today. I'm still on the schedule. You don't need to change anything on the schedule, but just say, we're going to 9 tower today, if normally you're on 7, or something of that sort. That happens actually quite a bit. I still need to know that you're on the schedule. I need to know where I can find you. So just text me and let me know that. Not a problem otherwise. Let's see what else is on my list. Oh, if you go into Precept and your nurse called off, and Jane talked about this in the Precept orientation, but there's somebody else there that's willing to take you for the day, that's fine. You don't need to notify me about that. I'm going to look for you on that unit, and you can just say, hey, this is Susie, and she's taking me today because, Rachel called off, or whatever your preceptor's name is. There may also be a time or two where your primary preceptor is not going to be, for whatever reason, days off, scheduled vacation time, something that they're not going to be able to give you your full 12 shifts. So we, in the past, have had students that would have one alternate preceptor. Now, that's not something you should, go and try and plan and figure out from the front end. But when you get there and you're doing your orientation with your primary preceptor, if they say, hey, I'm going to be off, such and such days, and I'm really only going to be able to give you 10 out of your 12 days, but I have such and such a person, or the manager said this person would be able to help you for your other 2 days, that's fine. Just let us know of that. Let us know that person's name, because we still have to get their information to submit to the Board of Nursing. And that's fine. That happens. So you might be with somebody else for a couple of your shifts, but it shouldn't be divided like 5 and 5 or anything like that, because then that preceptor that has agreed to take you on really is not fulfilling what they promised for. Now, since COVID hit, we have had some situations where preceptors have had to back away, go home for a couple of weeks, and that's something totally out of your control, totally out of our control, and we'll deal with it when that situation arises. But you should plan to go ahead and get your preceptor schedule as you talk with them this week, and get as many days plugged in of your 12 shifts as possible. Let's see. The first time I come to round on you, I will be expecting you to hand me the CV form. Your preceptors have received that in their email. It does say that they should fill it out and they should give it to you. So I will be asking for that. So you want to put that on your radar as something you should be asking your preceptor for when you go for your first day. Hey, I know that you got the CV form in your email from my faculty. Did you fill that out yet? Because they're going to be looking for it when they come around this first time. It's a very short form. It would probably take them less than 5 minutes to fill it out. So make sure that you get that. We should also have the handbook form. Jane showed that to you in our preceptor orientation. It's available to you in the preceptor folder. You and the preceptor both sign the very last page of that. And that says that you have been given a copy of the handbook form or handbook, and you've read it in its entirety. You understand what you are allowed to do and what you are not allowed to do. And same for he or she. And so you both will sign that. I'll be collecting that as well. The third form is the flash orientation form. That will, let me pull that up. That looks like, yeah, this form here. Okay, hopefully y'all can see that. That is this form here. We've done one of these at the beginning of all the clinicals. Again, you guys maybe haven't done that because you haven't been in a lot of live clinical with COVID, but this is what it looks like. You're going to fill that out along with your preceptor. It basically is just like an awareness of where things live on a given unit. And that does not come back to me. I will not be asking for that back. When I round, I want the CV form and the handbook form. The flash orientation form stays either with the unit manager or the unit educator. So just ask your preceptor, they should know who to turn that into. Also, when I round, I'm going to be giving you 2 copies of my business card. Jane mentioned this in orientation. The business card will have my information on the front. It will have Jane and Janie's information on the back. So, you know, if you need to reach out to one of us pretty emergently and I am not able to answer my phone, you can always contact one of them and get somebody right away. If there's anything, God forbid, like an injury to you, an injury to a patient as a result of something that you were doing, a medication error, a needle stick, anything that has happened to you, I need to know about that right away, and then I work with your preceptor to get all the appropriate paperwork filled out. So you'll have those business cards for that reason. Also be giving your patches. You need to look at your handbook, your student handbook, and know how to wear what height and what sleeve to sew those onto your uniform. They have a glossy back. It makes it look like they're iron-on, but they are not iron-on. They will not stay on. So you're going to have to stitch those on or find somebody that you know that can get this stitched on. They are required as part of your uniform. Okay. As far as the rest of the uniform, again, even though we have a mask on, that does not mean that you can leave your nose ring or your tongue ring or anything like that in. Lip ring, I don't know what all you might have. Just, it has to be removed. Earrings need to be appropriate. Rings, you know, necklaces, bracelets, all that stuff still applies. Pay attention to that. Tattoos, pay attention to the piece about that. Your hair has to be tied up. If it's, you know, long enough to fall into your face, brushes your shoulders if you lean forward, needs to be tied up. No scented perfumes or lotions or anything like that. So just refresh yourself on the requirements and the guidelines in the student handbook. Your phones, do not have them out of your pocket. I realize that you might have them in your pocket, you might have a pharmacy app on them, but you also have the pharmacy micromedics on your computer, so there's really no excuse to pull your phone out. You can have your phone in your pocket, so should you need to contact me, it's available. But really, the best policy is just to keep it in your backpack or whatever it is that you bring and put in the staff locker room or something like that. I would also encourage you not to bring money or a purse or a laptop or any valuables, because you probably are not going to have somewhere locked and secure to house your things. You'll have a place certainly for your lunchbox and for your keys, but we cannot guarantee that your valuables are going to be in a locked space. So really think about, what do I really need to bring with me before I come to the clinical unit, okay? Let's see, what other things I have? Oh, your PPE competency form, I will be scanning those to your email this week, so you guys can take a picture of that, or be able to pull that up on your phone should someone on your unit ask you to see your PPE competency list, and they may. That's one of the guidelines from the hospitals, that they want to have students readily able to access that. I have these guidelines here somewhere. I'm going to pull them up and show them to you. Here they are. Okay, share my screen again. Excuse me. The change from the cold rain to the warm sunny, and now it's getting cold again. Let's see, this one, COVID reminders. This is also in your Preceptor folder. You guys should not have any problem finding that, but here it is. So reminders from the nursing office about personal masks are required upon leaving your vehicles. When you enter through the deck, you're going to be asked to change into a different mask. You guys should have the Twizzle app now on your phones. It was sent out by Dr. Hopkins and several others in the past several weeks, that you should do that screening and be able just to show that on your phone as you come through the checkpoint. As far as PP donning and doffing, this is what I was saying, the checklist, I will scan it out to your emails here in the next day or two. So you will definitely have it available in your email. You could even take a screenshot of it, but be ready to show it if someone asks you on your unit for it. Fit tested N95 mask. You guys have all been fit tested for that. You have to wear it when you're caring for all COVID patients or patients under investigation that are symptomatic. During any aerosolizing procedures, so anybody that's getting a nebulizer treatment or anything like that, or if in the operating room. The fit-tested N95 masks are also required when caring for patients with anticipated prolonged exposure of more than 15 minutes with a patient who cannot tolerate wearing a mask. Reminders are placed in the entryways of the rooms with uniform signage. Okay. Eye protection has to be worn at all times, taking care of patients now or within 6 feet of other teammates, regardless of COVID-19 status. Last semester, we actually had to put them on before we got out of our car, just like we did with our masks. So I think that's probably a good policy to have. Keep all of that in mind. And you do not have to wear the goggles that we issued you from the school. If you have your own that cover the sides of your eye too, not just the front, you're certainly welcome to wear those also. Let's see, did I want to show you anything else? We already looked at that. We looked at that. Just checking back through stuff. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Again, make sure you schedule your days. Get with your preceptor. Make sure you schedule your days. Don't just put them on the night before you plan to go for a certain day, one at a time. We need to be able to track that out and see how that's going to be. We have to make sure that we meet the requirements with the Board of Nursing, that we don't have more than a certain number of students on that we're responsible for in a given day. And so the sooner you can put those on, the better. Again, if you have to remove some for the reason of your preceptor having a change, that does not account against you. If you remove them more than 2 because of your own doing, because you decided you wanted to do something or you didn't want to go in this day or something of that sort, after 2, you go on an action plan, because that's really no different than calling out of work. Even though the day hasn't actually arrived, it's no different than taking yourself off of the work schedule. And this is a profession where we need everybody there. We can't have that. So make sure that you follow through on that. I know that's a lot of information, but most of it's recap from the preceptor orientation. Make sure you pay attention to all the forms in the folder, the preceptor folder. If you have any questions, email me or text me. Just please include your name again. I look forward to seeing you all in the preceptor around the hospital, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your spring break.